It's episode 100 of Front End Fire, and boy, is it a good one. Rolldown is rolling into Vite. Arc is reinventing itself as Dia, and Safari 2026 is on the way with all your gooey, glassy goodness. Let's get right into it. I'm your host, Jack Harrington, and with me are my esteemed colleagues, Paige Niederinghouse.
Hey, everybody.
And TJ Van Tol.
I'm ready for episode 100.
No kidding,
Yeah.
right? And I'm bummed that I'm kind of here with a cold, but, you know, that's just life. I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But we got lots of good news, so let's get into it.
Yes.
All right, Paige, what you got?
So, Void Zero, which was founded by Evan Yu about maybe 8 months, a year ago, has one of their biggest new releases out, which is Rolldown-Vite.
That's huge. Yeah.
Yes. So, Rolldown-Vite is a drop-in replacement for Vite as we know it, and it is a package that now has feature parity with today's Vite. And it is just going to make your build times, your production build times so much faster.
Yeah,
that's
huge.
That is the main thing. So it is people who are using it already, some of the early adopters are seeing build time reductions between 3 and 16 times. And
what?
Yes.
I actually hadn't heard that up until now. That is mind-blowing.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. Okay, and they've seen memory usage also get cut by 100 times.
What? Oh my God. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So for those of you who aren't as aware of Rolldown, it is a Rust-based JavaScript tool because everything must be built for JavaScript in Rust. And it's a next generation bundler. And so they're also building the OXC tools along with it. So you'll have high performance parsers and transformers and resolvers and minifiers. But Rolldown-Vite is kind of the first drop-in replacement that they have. And you can use it now if you're using Vite. It's very simple to just pop in Rolldown-Vite instead. And yeah, it's that
easy.
It's really that easy.
Wow. Okay.
So once they've had a chance for more people to try it out, to get it kind of more stable, they're going to merge it into the main Vite code base in the future. And pretty soon it will be just the default that ships when you install Vite. Yeah.
That's really, really impressive, I got to say.
Yeah.
What level do they ascribe this some level of stability, like alpha, beta, or... it sounds like this is still just like an early try it out. We're not shipping it quite yet, but you might want to check it out sort of deal.
Yeah, they don't give it a title like an alpha or a beta tag, but they do say that people have already been using it. So there have been, I guess, early adopters who have been trying it, finding the edge cases and the bugs and things like that. But they just say it should be at feature parity at this point. So you should be able to just install it and see the performance improvements, but have no hopefully breaking issues or changes.
That's fantastic.
It's pretty cool. I do wonder, like, I've been very curious about Void Zero because they generated, a few $1 million. I don't know. I'm always curious about financial incentives behind things.
Yeah.
And like,
100%.
I don't see much here. Not that it's a bad thing. Like Vite is one of the most used tools in the front end world. So if it's getting in a crazy amount faster, that's something that benefits a ton of people. But I do just get curious. It's kind of interesting. But I mean, hey, good for us.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm not sure how they plan to monetize this or what how exactly they're going to make money and keep going, but I don't know, maybe they'll become like an open source nonprofit type of organization that's just building stuff for the greater web and the better JavaScript.
I know they probably do have sponsors that are a part of this. I know like the Vue and the Vite world has before, so it might just be that they have enough corporate sponsors of the project to be able to pull something like this off. But like I said, regardless, pretty just straight up good news for us. It's great
Yeah.
when a tool you use just becomes suddenly way faster and is still compatible.
Right.
This takes an amazing amount of money, though, to keep those engineering teams are, a decent team is probably $1 million a year, right? So that's a lot of sponsorship, yeah.
It is, but when you've got big companies using it, they should be giving back. And that's,
Yeah.
that's something that we're starting to see more of. There's more organizations who are trying to get those companies to do their I guess not due diligence, but to give credit where it's due for the tools that they're using for free and have been for decades.
Yeah. And Vite is a spectacular great tool.
It is.
It really is. All right. TJ, what you got?
I've got Safari 26 because we are
now
skipping
on yours.
it.
Yeah.
For those counting at home, you might have realized the previous version of Safari was 18, but the Safari team is following in Apple's footsteps. So if you've seen any of the news coming out of WWDC that they renamed all of their operating systems to be version 26, it's kind of following the model of cars where you ship in mid to late 2025, but you call it 26, and whatever you can think of it how you will, but that's what we're doing, and Safari is following along as well. And so they released a blog post talking about the things that they'll be shipping. This is a beta release, so this isn't something you can opt if you upgrade your OS, which is probably not the greatest idea. You can pick this up, but probably want to wait till the stable version ships in the fall. That's when Apple usually pushes out all their operating systems, and this new version of Safari will be tied to it as well. But I wanted to talk about the stuff that they are shipping in this because there's quite a bit. I'm going to save the most interesting bit for last to keep this interesting and go over a couple of the smaller things first. One small thing is that you can now use SVG files for favicons in Safari, which is a pretty trivial thing, but it's kind of nice if you've ever had to deal with favicons before. It's just like it feels like one of those like archaic features of the web.
It is.
Dates back to the 90s.
That's because it is. Yeah.
Yes. So having like a modern scaling version way of doing that is pretty nice. So it's a small thing, but pretty cool. They are shipping anchor positioning, which is a layout mechanism we've talked about on this show before. It's basically just a way you can position an element relative to another element. It works especially well with popover attributes, which are basically built-in ways of doing custom tooltips. And so the anchor positioning, the popover attribute shipped in Safari 17. Anchor positioning will be shipping as part of Safari 26. So that's pretty cool as well. Scroll-driven animations are new in Safari 26. These are pretty slick. I have not tried these out, but I kind of want to after seeing them, because the general idea is if you've ever built or worked on a web page or just even seen a web page where an animation is triggered based off your scroll position. So you're on a marketing page, you get down to 50%, something comes in from the side or something spins or even just slightly tilts.
Yeah.
And those animations range from like interesting and cool all the way to extremely annoying. And hopefully, if you're listening to this, you're building ones that are kind of interesting and cool and less annoying. But if you're building those today, you're building those with JavaScript, because you have to like track the user scroll position and then also track whether the element is in the viewport to set up the timing for your animation. And these scroll-driven animations is a way you can move at least some of this to just being done through CSS. So there are these new CSS properties, animation timeline and animation range. And you can do things like, say, start an animation when 50% of this element is in view. So you could time it basically to when it hits a certain part, when the user hits a certain part of the viewport. And it looks really cool. And support for this is already in Chrome, and Firefox has it behind a flag. And it's a feature that also falls back really nicely, because worst case, if your scroll animations don't happen, as long as you make it so that if the animation doesn't happen or isn't supported, the thing is still kind of there and readable. You can still use it. So this is on my list of things to try. I don't know if either of you have done any scroll-based stuff with CSS. I've done it with JavaScript, and I've hated myself. So
that's
I'm
mostly.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I think I did the parallax thing when it was the thing to do. Everybody's doing it. And I've definitely seen some really good ones where like stuff, explodes into all its component parts and then back together again. You're like, ooh, that's actually really sexy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I know. Absolutely.
I've
and
seen
to do
some
it
good
in
ones.
hardware, it basically what you do when you turn this stuff into CSS is you're doing it essentially in hardware at that point, right? So that you're going to get a much smoother effect.
Yep, for sure. There's a lot in this blog post too. I'm not going to read through every feature. The link is in the blog post if you want to check it out. They're introducing a new model element, like a full-on HTML element for working with 3D models. Oh. And it's kind of interesting. They talk about it in the context of Vision OS. So for the Vision Pro, and actually some of the other features they talk about in here are enhanced graphics capabilities. So they're clearly thinking about the web on devices like that and what it looks like, which to me it reads a little bit esoteric at the moment because most of us aren't working or using those sort of environments. But it does show kind of interestingly what the Safari team is thinking about and working on. I don't think these are necessarily bad features. It's just less relevant to the day in, day out of your average web developer at the moment.
Could be cool from like an AR perspective.
Yeah. Yep. For sure. I mean, and it's not just Apple working. You've got like the Meta glasses, a bunch of other companies working on that sort of thing. So that's where this sort of thing could be useful in the future for sure.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
And then the last thing
here we go.
Not really a feature, but more of a change. And this one's kind of weird. So they have this heading on their blog post, and it's like the second heading in the whole thing, that every site can be a web app on iOS and iPadOS, which is a very confusing heading because why wouldn't they be a website or a web app? The background here is they're making a change to how PWAs work, and it's something that they already did for Safari that I actually had no idea. So the full background here is when you create a PWA, you create a manifest JSON file.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of the fields in there is you provide this display field. And the two main displays are, one is browser, which basically means just treat this like any other like website, essentially. It opens in a browser with browser controls. And another is standalone, which means treat this as like kind of like a native app. So it'll open without an address bar or front back and forward buttons or refresh buttons or anything like that. Make it seem more like an app itself. So Apple talks in here that when they made it so that you could add web apps to the dock on Macs, that they treated all apps as standalone apps. What that means is that regardless, even if you didn't have a manifest, if you added an app to your dock, when it was launched, it would launch not as like a tab in Safari. It would launch as like its own window with no... It's just the app, like
that's
in
cool.
and of itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
And so basically what they're saying is they're bringing this to iOS and iPadOS as well, so that by default, if somebody chooses to add it to their home screen, it'll be treated like an app and not just like another tab in Safari, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah.
The one confusing bit of this, and this is a feedback for the Safari team if you're listening. So when you go to add a web app to your home screen, so you're on your iPhone, you go to bluecollarcoder.com or whatever, and you're like, I really want this on my home screen. So you go into the share menu, because it's there of all weird places, and you say, hey, add to home screen. It'll give you this prompt to say like, oh, what do you want to call it? What's the name you want on your home screen? But they're also going to have a checkbox that just says open as web app that'll be checked by default. And I think this is horrible UX because it's confusing even to me, because this is hard to even like explain logically.
All right.
Open as web app means treat it as like a standalone mode where it opens as a native app essentially. And if you turn it off, it's basically like a Safari bookmark where it just opens up in Safari.
Okay.
But like Will your average user, if they even find this menu, because we've talked before about how all of this is super hidden and maybe none of this matters anyways because people aren't adding websites, web apps to their home screen anyways. But for anybody that does find it, like, will they have any clue what this checkbox that says open as web app means? If I had to go down this research journey to kind of figure out what it actually means, I don't think your average user stands any hope.
Not unless your son or your daughter is like looking over your shoulder like, hey, click that button, Dad.
That is such a confusing wording for it. I think they really need to rethink that one at least.
Yeah, that's why I said if you're listening, Safari team, if you're on the line, like the feature I think is fine and probably good. Because I kind of like if you're adding it to your home screen as an app, like maybe it should just act as an app. I think that's probably reasonable. But it could use some better wording around how it's presented.
Here's the one question that I have, and maybe I'm just overthinking this or not thinking about it correctly, but I have a couple of websites that I've bookmarked onto my iPad that I like because I want to get to them quickly. One of them is the one that I use for like my watercolor painting tutorials. Another one is for exercising, and both of them require me to log in before I can see the stuff. It's all authenticated. So how is that going to work if I am now in a web app situation? Is it going to redirect me, or how am I going to stay logged in?
You're just not going to have the URL bar. I mean, yeah, you probably go through your auth.
I think it will redirect. I know for sure that if it requires, so if the login is all on the same domain, it'll just work as normal, and still like extensions, like if you have password extensions, those are going to continue to work. If it has to launch you to a different domain, it will open that window just in Safari normally. And I tried this because I tested this out on our Blues documentation site. And I was like, what happens if I click an external link? It just opens it in like a Safari tab, and it just
that makes sense.
It leaves the thing open. And so in theory, if your auth flow needs to link out elsewhere and it needs to go back, I would hope it's able to reconnect the dots. I don't really know. But if it's just like a standard login screen, it'll just work. It should just work in theory.
In theory.
Cool.
But that's Safari 26. Presumably there's also going to be some glassy look to it or something. I don't really know. I have not installed the like macOS beta on my main machine, nor do I recommend anybody else do that. Just wait until this thing is stable.
Whoops.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did that.
You what?
Wait,
on your main Mac?
It kind of depends. I mean, my laptop. Yeah. Why not? What the heck? It's
because everything stops working.
No,
when you do the new version.
No, it all looks exactly the same, man. I mean, there are there is the little glassy effects on it and whatnot. But in general, like all my apps still work. One I think says, "Oh, you're on a version that like I'm not sure we support," but it totally supports it. Like, and all my stuff still works on Node. Everything works. It's fine. There was such this animus towards the new glass look. I'm like, I mean, is it really that bad? And then you try it out, and you're like, it's not actually all that. I mean, it's only where the OS is the standard Apple stuff, and it's it's a little roundier or whatever, but it's fine. Like I don't get whatever he's freaking out about.
Presumably, you just tried it on your Mac. Did you try it on your phone at all too, or?
Yes.
Oh, no, don't check.
Why not? It's you guys, YOLO, man. What are you gonna do?
And it's fine there too. No issues.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although I will say, it definitely seems like I have an iPhone 14 Pro Max, right, which I thought was a pretty good phone, but apparently that's legacy hardware, and you don't get the really cool glassy effect looks. And it's pretty clear that like this is just skin coating over stuff. It's like you can definitely see that they just kind of like slapped on things, and you're like, okay, whatever. This is.
Some of the complaints I did see were performance related because it does take some processing power to do the like glassy effects, which is why some people stick away from that because just the shading required and to do it on the fly as you're like moving things around. Yeah. Really quick. That's
planned obsolescence, TJ. That's how we get you to upgrade.
Yeah,
right?
see,
But what do you have a
there you go.
GPU for? Right? You're going to mine Bitcoin,
You're going to generate AI videos of you
Exactly.
looking like a sock puppet.
Exactly.
And glass
you're not doing that on an iPhone anyways. So
Yeah, that's true. For what it's worth, I think I did have a reasonably legit reason, and that's because Apple had said that they were going to open up the API to their local on-device LLM. And I was like, okay, that's kind of interesting. If Olama decides to like have an adapter to that, I want to be there. I want to see, like how their on-device LLM actually works when it's not wrapped by their silly, overly system guardrail-y type deal when it comes to all the messaging and things.
I'm definitely interested when people start playing with that to see what it can do, because I think that's one of the smartest things that they announced, and it'll be interesting to see what people build with it.
I'm not full psycho. I only half psycho.
Still, I do not recommend.
Yes, for everybody else.
Jack's experience aside,
yes, exactly.
Don't like running betas on your main device.
Yeah, only on your backups.
The one I'm working on right now is my recording Mac, and it's fine.
Yeah,
it's
if you have a second device that you use for some other purpose, fine. Like go crazy. But yeah, and you can try out Safari 26. There you go.
There you go. Exactly. All right. Well, I'm going to cover Dia this week. So from the browser company, they're the folks that made Arc. I've been a longtime Arc fan, and it's not really that I use all the Arc features, but it's a great browser. It's obviously a browser that wraps Chromium like all these ones do. And I guess maybe 6 months or so ago, the Arc company said, "Hey, Arc is we're gonna EOL that end of life, and we're gonna come out with this new thing, Dia." And nobody knew what it was. But the whole idea is basically kind of AI related. So they just released, and because I was on the Arc, I have an Arc account. I was able to get early access to it, and then give you guys invites to it as well.
Yeah, appreciated.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting experience. So you get through this whole kind of Nintendo-y type, setup, which is very cool. And then you're taking back to a browser. It is a browser. But the shtick here is that there is a very strongly integrated AI component to it. And that comes up as a chat. And then that chat can really look at the tab that you're on or other tabs at the same time and agentically kind of use your browser on your behalf, which I haven't really seen integrated to this extent before. So yeah, it was pretty impressive. And they've got some built-in tools where you can have it kind of author stuff for you, or you can go and create your own tools. I created like a tarot card thing where it would go off and like give you a tarot card reading, So it's pretty interesting. So if you've got access to it, I would recommend trying it out for at least.
The one cool feature that I could see myself using immediately, so their home screen, and I just brought it up to look at it here real quick. It's got a prompt that looks like you're talking to ChatGPT. It's like it looks exactly like it.
Everybody's doing this, yeah.
But you can add either files or tabs that you have open. And I think why this is cool, so just to give you something that came up literally this week is I was working on documentation, and to work on the documentation, I had open our internal wiki where I had some write-ups from our wiki. I'd open our existing docs. Mm-hmm. And then I had open like ChatGPT to talk to it. But ChatGPT didn't have the context of my internal wiki or my documentation page. So I had to provide some of that. And I think it would be kind of cool if I could talk to it and say like, hey, check out our internal docs, check out what we have right there. And then like write a new section for me and like give me a starting point that I could use it for. That sort of thing is instantly useful for me. And I work that way a lot. And I think a lot of other people do too. Like you have PDFs that you're looking at or Word docs or Teams. I don't know what else, whatever else people are working
Notion.
on. But just
Notion.
Excellent. Yeah, exactly. And almost all of these things are either, a lot of them have web capabilities. Like there's a good chance a lot of us we're working in the browser and we have 50 tabs open, and that's just all that we're working on. And so to be able to instantly feed that stuff in to an LLM is honestly pretty compelling and something I might try out working with here over the next couple weeks.
Yeah, I tried it on X. I literally just said, "Hey, what's on my timeline?" And it was cool. It actually went off, grabbed the timeline and gave me a summary of it. I thought it was actually kind of neat.
Yeah. When you first open up Dia, it links you to this YouTube video of them. It's just a 3.5-minute video of them kind of showing you how it works. And actually that is really informative because it shows them, you have a YouTube video open and it'll give you a summary of the video and timestamps within it. Or you have one was calendar scheduling, like with your email. Somebody requested that they could meet on Friday, and you can then tell it to look at your calendar and find the time blocks that are open, and then write a response, and then you just insert the response into the email reply. So that's tool calling. That's cool, connections probably through MCP or something like that. That's pretty neat, actually.
Yeah, it kind of puts an AI front on any website you want, which is really kind of cool. I mean, imagine Discord has a website version of Discord, so you could actually log into your Discord on web if you want to. And now you got this AI side panel, and you can be like, you walk into this conversation that's been going on for 3 days, you can literally just ask, Dia, hey, what's going on here? Can you summarize this for me? I don't know what I missed. Right?
It did make me think right away because I think what you said there, the fact that we interact with so much through the web, like Discord, some of these apps I have open is just installable apps, but they're all ones I could do through the web.
Yeah.
And if this were useful, like we use Slack, I could be on the browser in Slack. I could be, to Paige's point, I could have my calendar open. I could have my Discord open.
Yes, sir.
And that's like instant context for this thing. I don't know. I will say, I'll give the caveat. I mean, this thing is brand new as we're recording this. So I'm more positive about the vision, but I've not tested it, right? I have no idea whether this actually works really beyond the absolute basics. Like I've done what Jack's described too, where I've just said, what is up here? What can you, like those sort of things, the basics, but we need to give this more time to see if can actually live up to this sort of stuff. But I mean, we talked about Dia last week and I said I needed to see some of it. And now I can say I've seen some of it and I can at least see the vision of what they have in mind.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll give it a test drive and let you know if it is as good as the videos make it look.
It was kind of funny. I asked it to summarize the video and it gave me a pretty good summary. But it's clearly got something in the system prompt where it's very proud of itself. It has the whole value prop of Dia in there. It's like, and so I kind of snarkily asked it, like, how is this not just Chrome with, an AI panel bolted on? And it goes, oh, no, this is so much more than that. And it said, this is built from this is a browser built from the ground up with AI in mind. And I kind of actually slapped back at it. I'm like, okay. One, you did not write a whole browser from the ground up. You're on Chromium. And I was like, okay, you're right. It's not, it's not a whole browser.
It is an interesting parallel between, so like Cursor and Windsurf generating all this hype and the money when like the bulk of the functionality that is actually useful is just Visual Studio Code and all the hooks that Visual Studio Code built into it so that these sort of things were possible. And like the same sort of things going on here where it's like Google is doing all this work to keep the web standards moving, to move all this stuff forward. And then Dia is like, oh, it's a browser built from the ground up when it's just 97% of the code base is Chromium that's been in the works for 20 years.
Thankless work. Thankless. Thankless work of working on weird CSS stuff that, only front end Fire folks know about, from the Fire starters. And, Yeah. And it's crazy. And I just don't get it. But anyway, that's the society that we live in. All right. Do we have any lightning news?
I've got one thing I was going to mention. So Cursor, we just talked about Cursor. Oh, I got to play the sound effect, Jack. What are we doing?
Okay.
It's 100 episodes in. You think I would know
I
this.
know, right?
Right,
we are constantly evolving the format, though.
Yeah. This wouldn't hit as well, though, if the sound effect weren't there. But Cursor, we just talked about it. Cursor just raised $900 million. They announced a Series C funding round from Thrive, Excel, Andreessen Horowitz, and DST, and that they've grown to over $500 million in ARR, which is annual recurring revenue, and is used by more than half of the Fortune 500, including NVIDIA, Uber, and Adobe. And these are big numbers.
Yes, they are.
Possible? That sounds so big.
Yeah. So I think like the revenue numbers were more interesting to me than the funding numbers, because we've been hearing huge funding numbers in the AI world, and with Windsurf getting bought for $3 billion, Cursor getting $900 million is a lot of money, but it's not, I don't think, surprising. Mm-hmm. But knowing that they're making $500 million a year in revenue is just huge. That's a big number. I don't know.
Why are you doing that?
Because skeptical.
It's like they have to. They're a markup on top of OpenAI / Anthropic. So those companies are also making mega bank.
Well, sure. So this is revenue. This isn't profit. So
okay, all right.
Like they might have almost no margin on this, and they might just be functioning as like they're just funneling money from people into Anthropic's.
Right.
And that's might be what's happening here. But even if that is the case, that's still a lot of money to be taking in, and that tells me that there are more of these bigger, because typically speaking, when you're making this much money, it's coming from the big companies. It's coming,
definitely. These are huge enterprise deals.
Enterprise.
And every single they're buying a license for every single developer they have, and everyone in those companies are enforcing that they use it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. You convince some CTO, there's been some groundswell within the company. CTO says AI is the future. Every developer is getting Cursor, sign some big contract, and are off to the races. But
they lay off half the staff, and then a month later they have to bring them all back because whoopsie, actually the AI can't actually do all that stuff.
That or the public outcry was so bad that they thought what they could do with AI, they cannot.
I think too, it's partially because their pricing is somewhat reasonable. Honestly, it's not like a super expensive tool. At least in the terms of, software can get expensive. Once you start to step into Adobe territory, or if you're getting involved with like IBM software, Auth software, or any database, anything as an offering, like your costs can go up right away. And Cursor, in comparison, is I think it's a easier sell to like your executives of like, well, if it's like $20 a month a developer, it's a rounding error for a big company.
Yeah, for sure. Plus, your board is probably all like, what's your AI thing? What's your AI angle on the product?
Gotta have
what's
the
your
story.
AI angle in dev?
Mm-hmm.
You gotta have it. So
yep. Gives the CTO something to talk about in that, like the internal meetings and to the investors and such.
And I've seen more than once on just like in passing about AI and tech and companies that are adopting it. Like there are companies now that are making their teams validate why they cannot do something with AI and actually need more headcount or more staff or more people. They're like, you have to show me that whatever it is that you need cannot be done with AI tools, and then maybe we will let you have that extra person on your team that you say you want.
We've talked about doing an episode that's like a deep dive on this type of stuff, and we might have to do it here at some point.
I think we definitely will.
Yeah.
Well, let's get off of that exciting, happy topic and into what's making us happy this week. TJ, what's making you happy this week?
A clip I saw from The Price is Right is making me happy this week.
Really?
Because, of all things.
Yeah.
So The Price is Right. I would hope if you're listening to this, you know about The Price is Right. We might have some international listeners that might not be, but basically it's a game show that's been running in the U.S. for forever. I don't know, I don't know what it actually got started.
As long as I've been alive, and maybe before,
And it used to be, I remember it as a kid back before we had cable. If you were watching daytime TV, The Price is Right was like the only thing on. So I remember
Hogan's Heroes and Price is Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yep. So I remember watching a ton of it as a kid. But for anybody not familiar, one of the key segments in the show is that they bring up four people. they put out something, and then everybody tries to guess the price of that something.
Boy. Oh, boy.
And
Okay.
the reason this came up is because they dropped an Apple Vision Pro onto the show. And it was fascinating because the Apple Vision Pro is a $3,500 device. And so what makes this clip so funny is that the people start guessing, and the first person guessed $700. And then the winning bid was only $1,270, which is basically, like a third of what it actually costs.
Wow.
And it's just amusing because we talked about how it's such an overpriced device, even to people like us, but to see just random people being shocked by the cost of this thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. It brought a smile to my face. It was pretty amusing.
Well,
Hilarious.
I think that's kind of like the whole idea of wearables. The tech people are super into it. They're like, yeah, I want to put this thing on my head. But I was talking to my manager the other day, and he's like, I showed a video of the Apple Vision Pro to my wife when it first came out, their little demo video of like, here's what it looks like. Here's you wearing it. Here's you talking to somebody on the outside. And he's like, her first reaction was just like repulsion. She did not want to get near that thing. She did not want to talk to somebody who was wearing it. She definitely did not want to try one on herself. And I think that's what these tech companies are missing when they're doing user research on these products, is just the random normal people who don't care about the tech but use it, and just they do not want to put these things on their heads or on their faces or near their bodies.
Have I showed either of you the picture I have of me wearing the thing?
No.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. You need to see this. I'll put it in the Discord later as well. I'll find it because I look as ridiculous as one person could possibly look wearing this thing. I mean, I think everybody does, so I don't think that's unique to me, but it was just hilarious because I'm in this thing thinking like, oh, this is kind of interesting. Then I see a picture of myself and I say, oh God, like, is that...
I mean, they are going to get smaller, but the thing is, if your whole existence as an Apple engineer is like going up and down the San Francisco Peninsula on the Caltrain and getting off on like Mountain View and Palo Alto Station and Cupertino and all that, like you live in this bubble of tech bros and tech people, and so the idea of people biking around with a thing struck to their heads is like, to you, that's just like another day. That's just like a Tuesday, But you take that out into like, Idaho, and people are going to be like, what spaceship did you drop out of? Like, what are you talking about? Like, that's insane. Yeah.
This might take me a minute to find, so we should move on. We'll come back to it because I don't want to drop this, but we should move on for the moment.
All right, Paige, what's making you happy?
The television series Paradise is what's making me happy this week. And it's a relatively new show. I think it came out at the beginning of this year, and it was a week-by-week thing, so it was not one where
you decided to hold and binge?
Yeah, exactly.
Good
waited.
Good call.
Waited to binge it. But it's really good because I had a bunch of friends who were talking about it from week to week, just saying, they were really enjoying it. And so when the series or the season finally concluded, we watched it, and it's really good. It's really well acted. It is another dystopian sci-fi kind of thing because that's apparently the trend that we're in right now for movies and television.
Yeah.
But if you want to imagine what the world was like when there's very few survivors and they're in a mountain in Colorado, and maybe the outside world made it and maybe that it didn't, this is a good one. There's mystery. There's all kinds of ethical questions about who should have made it and gotten chosen to survive and things like that. And it's really well done with a lot of good cast members that you'll recognize from other shows. And yeah, we went through it really fast because it was kind of gripping.
Is it Paramount? Was it on again?
Yes, I think it was. I think MTV, Paramount Plus,
one of those.
Whatever that behemoth is.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good one. I enjoyed the heck out of that one. Although it's weird, so many shows nowadays are color graded, And I remember that one being really color graded heavily, and it kind of got annoying after a little bit, but whatever, it's fine. That's just me and my little camera thing. All right. Well, what's making me happy this week is a new John Wick movie called Ballerina. Just went to go see it. And yeah, it is not doing well financially, which is kind of sad, but it's fun, and it's got that kind of over the top John Wick thing. It is not the same. She doesn't have the same style as John Wick. She's much more in your face, a lot of knife fighting, things like that. But there are definitely some very, very memorable scenes. And once it gets going, it does not let up. And it's a blast. Literally, in a lot of spots, actually.
So does John Wick make an appearance in the movie?
He does. And it is
Nice.
much more than just a cameo. They kind of actually dovetail, kind of had this movie and I think it was the second John Wick movie and maybe a little bit of the third John Wick movie kind of intersect with this one. But then he comes in at the end or around the end and actually he's got a full on 3-minute, full on or in that kind of range fight scene where it's, classic John Wick kind of thing. But
nice.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah, definitely worth it. Yeah, check it out.
Yeah.
I think I've established on this show that one of my most unpopular opinions is that I did not like the John Wick. I only saw the first movie and I did not like it. And I think I was threatened to, usually when I tell this to people, they threaten to, to remove me from their lives. I don't know. It's a very unpopular
Excommunicate
position.
you.
Excommunicado, as they say in John Wick verse. I would not do that to you. I totally get it. And actually, the reason that I saw it in the theater was that my dog actually hates the sound of gunshots in shows.
Oh,
and so he's not going to go to the movie theater with me. Although in Portland, not unheard of.
Not the weirdest thing,
but exactly, yeah.
Well, maybe you'll communicate me after seeing a picture of me in the Vision Pro. So I found it.
Okay.
I dropped it in the Discord if you want to check it out.
Right.
But
oh my, no.
I think it's never. I don't think anybody sees themselves in wearing one of these things and goes that's a good picture of me. It's just not. I don't think it's flattering. Let's just put it that way.
I think you look fine, but the problem is the mushroom head, the mushroom, your hair kind of goes mushroom on the top.
Yeah, but that's kind of in a way my
and then
point.
That's going to happen.
It's not like it's going to fit on really nicely and accentuate your hair. I don't know. I don't know. It is amusing. It was a great thing to try out. I've never paid $3,500 for it, but
that was going to be my question. After trying one out, do you want to get your own?
Nope. But I do think if you have the opportunity to try one and you haven't, you should do it because it's a cool experience. And so if you try it, great. And then just, you
can go to the Apple store and try one. You make an appointment and try it out.
Yep.
All right. Well, that brings us to an end of this week's Friend and Fire episode 100. Yes. Woo!
We did it.
All right. Well, come on over and join us on Discord. We have a Front End Fire channel within the Blue Collar Coder server. Jump on there. We've got our X socials and all of that kind of good stuff going. So come on out. Join us, talk to us, tell us what you like about the show, what you don't like about the show. Congratulate us for episode 100. Tell your friends about us, and we'll see you next week.
Sounds good. See you, everybody.